This is Vita Sackville-West's contribution to Queen Mary's Doll's House Library. The Doll's House Library was collected between 1921 and 1924 as part of this time capsule they were trying to create, which would reinvigorate arts, crafts and manufacturing, but which also would show people in the future what the ideal home looked like back in the 1920s. And the architect was Sir Edwin Lutyens, who was in a relationship with Lady Sackville, who was Vita Sackville-West's mother. So he was good friends with Vita. And it was due to him that she was involved in writing a book for the Doll's House.
Okay, that's right.
She was already an established writer, but her husband, Harold Nicholson, wasn't. But they persuaded Lutyens to let him contribute as well. So we have husband
so
and
he
wife
contributed as well?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
Lutyens wrote a letter to Princess Mary Louise saying they won't stop talking about it, we're going to have to let them.
You're going to have to let them.
The wonderful thing about Vita Sackville-West's book is that it's unique amongst her work in that it's quite whimsical and humorous. It's about a ghost living in the doll's house, but a very lively, inquisitive ghost, so she calls her a spirit. And this spirit has lived through the ages and seen all these marvellous moments in fairy tale history, such as waving Cinderella off to her ball and persuading Jack to step onto the beanstalk. And she's lived in so many different times and places. And then she comes to the next great moment in history, which is this doll's house that's been prepared by Princess Mary Louise for Queen Mary, and she sets up home in it. And the marvellous thing is that Vita Sackville-West is writing about what the doll's house looks like before anyone else knows, because she's been able to talk to Lutyens about it and to go and see it being built.
Yes.
And none of the public have had access to it yet.
So she knew at the very beginning exactly what was...
She knew there were baths with running water, so she has her spirit have a bath and then leave the water in, and the next morning the guardians of the doll's house are perplexed, she says. She writes in her book about why the baths are full of water. And she writes about Lutyens in it, saying that he comes to peer at the house through his largest pair of spectacles, because he's been asked if he is playing tricks on everyone by filling up the baths, but he says no.
I love the but written in red.
Yes. It's really lovely the way that she's divided up her book like that. Yeah. This is towards the end. She's saying if people don't want this spirit to leave the house with baths full and dirty plates on the table, they need to provide her with a maid. And all the trouble will come to an end.
It's just, isn't it, encapsulating a story in that size. It's so difficult to just get it right, and if you think of it on a bit of paper, it's nothing. It's an essay, really, isn't it?
It is, and how to make it fit into the space you've been provided.
Yes,
how to make it long enough or short enough, and how to break up the chapters or the poetry. I think is very difficult to make it fit in such a small book.
But they're masterpieces, aren't they?
So many of them are.
Absolutely
176 people did this for the Doll's House originally.
I just hope the next lot are going to be as good.
They will be, I'm sure.
I'm sure they will be. They're getting very excited about it, some of the authors.
Well, yes, it's such an exciting thing to be able to do again. And to understand more about how they did it in the past by repeating the process today.
It'd be interesting to compare them, when they're all finished, to compare them, the ones that are being written now to the earlier works, and just see how much has changed. Probably not very much.
Well, I think this one has inspired a few of today's contributions, and I think that's really
sure there are a
interesting.
few spirits and ghosts about days.
Stories about the Doll's House. One more really interesting thing about this story is that Vita Sackville-West wrote this perhaps a month before she met Virginia Woolf.
Oh, did she?
And Virginia Woolf had been asked to contribute to the Doll's House, but she declined, and she said in a letter to the friend that it was because her husband Leonard would not allow it. Which was quite a surprise, because they had a very supportive relationship, but perhaps he thought it wasn't worth her time. But we do have Vita's story, and it's significant to the relationship between Vita and Virginia, because in 1928 Virginia Woolf wrote Orlando, which is the story of a character living over time and travelling through history, changing appearance and gender based on where they are and who they're with, and that's exactly what this spirit does. So this little story is the inspiration for Virginia Woolf's book Orlando.
Is it? Goodness, I never knew that. How fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, she was an interesting lady.
Very much so.
Yes, she's rather a friend of my great aunt's.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, there's a book written about them as well, called Challenge.
Oh, yes.
So she was a writer as well.
Is that Violet Trefusis?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And I think Violet is a character in Orlando as well.
She is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Fascinating.
It's wonderful.